The scripture reading this morning will be from Psalm chapter 18. Psalm 18, verses 18 and 19. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. He brought me forth also into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me.
Well, happy Father's Day, and happy Father's Day to those who are not only fathers, but who have been like fathers. I know that all of us can think of people that were like that for us at the right time in our lives. We say they were just like a father and provided guidance where we needed it. And I hope it's a good day for everybody concerned in that regard. In getting ready for this morning, I looked up at a couple things I'll be sharing with you, of course, but it kind of begins with a very simple fact that might sound simple, but it's kind of complicated too. And it's this: as much as the world tries to deny it, men and women are different. The world's trying to erase that difference, and I think it's partly because of insults. When you say it depends, it's on the delivery. You say men or women. It's kind of, so I'm not one of those. And it's kind of, we take offense, and we pick fights sometimes, and it's unfortunate because both sides have kind of mistreated each other, that we seem always ready for a fight about what gender we happen to be, and that's sad. And setting aside all the bickering of the world, it's undeniable. Men and women are different, and the difference is important. It should be approached. This difference should be approached with respect. But I think it's also good to approach the difference with a sense of humor, because it's fun that we're different. And it'd be boring if we were exactly the same. I remember spending a great deal of my life thinking, okay, yeah, I've got to figure it out. We have different bodies, and that was it. And most of my life, I thought that was the case. And I think that's one of the primary beliefs of the world. It's just a matter of different bodies. And many people have pointed something out that didn't really sink in to me for a while. We don't have just different bodies. We have different minds. And I'm sure you've enjoyed the contrast over the years. In fact, there was a popular book, I haven't read this one, a long time ago. It was called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, I think it was called. And it really captures the idea we're from different planets. I remember, I don't know what age it was, it finally hit me. I thought, wow, we don't think the same at all. And that's kind of an eye-opener. But the world's figuring this out. In some respects, some people are like, no, it's just let's get rid of all the differences. And like I said, it's unfortunate. There's actually a book called The Female Brain. I read that one. It's called The Female Brain, and it's a scientific approach of how women think. It's just completely a secular book about the differences and how women think. And then this author, who happens to be a woman who wrote it, thought, she got feedback and said, I'm going to write one for males too, so it's called The Male Brain. It has less pages, so she had fun with that. But it's kind of important to keep something in mind, that when God made men and women, when he made male and female, he did it on purpose. And I find it very interesting that mankind is quickly trying to eliminate that difference in so many levels. Here's Genesis 1:27, in case anybody missed it. God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. He could have done anything he wanted. There could have been other ways to make sure that there was more human beings. There's all kinds of ways in the animal kingdom that can happen. But and then there's so many other levels, but he intentionally said, no, there's going to be two different kinds. And they're going to think differently. I think he designed that as well. He intentionally made two different kinds of people. Not just two different kinds of bodies, but two incredibly different kinds of people, each with its own advantages and each deserving its own honor. Don't let the world taint your thinking that one is considered more valuable or that both have been given the same purpose. Get rid of the world thinking that often tangles up this issue. Men and women are different, and they're supposed to be. Since this is Father's Day, I'm going to pick on the men a little bit, and we're going to focus on how men are different than women. And I bet you women figure that out long before the men do. But one thing about men is men are designed to be protectors. I'm not talking about the hunter-gatherer that, you learned about maybe in high school. In fact, there never was a slouching ape-like caveman. That never was on the stage at all. But there's a basic need in all men to protect. All the characteristics when a little guy is growing up, it's coming, along with him developing into a man. There's muscles. We all have them. Some of them are not as obvious as others. We have a fascination with power. We're kind of aggressive, have a tendency to strategize everything, probably overthink stuff. And we have great interest in physically changing our surroundings. And you combine all these to achieve a particular purpose, and it's to be a protector. It does not mean women can't protect. I've heard of stories of moms whose children were in danger and they lifted cars to handle the situation. But the protective nature of a man is something different. Men are drawn to strength and power. That's why we like stuff that goes vroom and boom. That's why we like that stuff. And I'm not going to make disclaimers through the whole lesson, but I'll do at least one more. Yes, girls can like vroom and boom, but it's not the same. It's not the same. Everything about a man is designed to protect. That is one of the times when a man will feel most like a man. One writer, I was getting ready for this, I came across kind of an odd story. This guy was talking about this very thing we're talking about, and he used a kind of a strange situation that happened to him where he saw this characteristic in several men all at one time. So it just so happens this writer, he lives in Boston, and he was walking with a friend, and they were, on foot. So they get to the light, and they're waiting for the walking man sign to show up, and they're going to cross. And the other people are waiting to cross. It's a pretty crowded part of Boston, very busy part of the city, lots of people, lots of traffic. And this guy and his friend were, chatting and stuff, and they kind of looked across the street. On the other side of the street, they noticed an elderly woman walking pretty slow, in her progress. She's walking slowly, and next to her were two little girls, maybe about 6 or 7, and probably her granddaughters, and they're walking together, the three of them. Didn't take long for these two guys to notice that this older woman was blind. She had a cane in one hand, and a seeing eye dog, a German Shepherd, was at the end of a leash in her other hand. Suddenly, another dog showed up. It was just a street dog, came running down the street, and it attacked the German Shepherd. And they began to fight. The dogs immediately had a disagreement, and it was chaos. The woman was trying to scare off the street dog, but she couldn't see. The little girls were crying. They were scared. And the noise just echoed all through this intersection. There were tall buildings, and it was just a horribly loud noise. He said in an instant, everyone was in motion. He himself and his friend ran across the street, but as they were running to help this woman and the two little girls, other men came out of nowhere from all directions. Taxi slammed on its brakes, and both the driver and the passenger hopped out. Other cars slammed on their brakes, and men jumped out of those cars, left the car doors open. 2 college guys showed up. And this is an area where there were a lot of townhouses, and one of the doors of the townhouses flew open, and here comes this guy, a bunch of men, one of them carrying a newspaper in one hand and his glasses in the other. In seconds, about 15 men are on the scene. Some pulled the woman and the 2 girls to safety, and the rest separated the dogs. The guy used the rolled-up newspaper, and they used their jackets to kind of chase off the street dog, and then all was well. And all the men took time to comfort the women and girls. The guy with the newspaper, his wife was standing at the door, and she waved them over. So why don't you come in and rest for a while? And they did so. And then all the men went back to their cars or walked away, and within a few more minutes, everything was back to normal. It was like it never happened. And this made such a huge impact on this guy who was talking about this. He said it was such a drastic example, a perfect demonstration of protectors. And I bet right now, us men in the room are thinking, that would be kind of fun. I wish that would happen because I'd like to be part of that. It's kind of exciting. There's something about being a part of that. When the men heard the sound of women and children in danger, they dropped everything. They didn't care about their own safety. They threw themselves into the situation to rescue. And another disclaimer, women would have done the same, but because the men were acting like men, they didn't have to. That's the point. There's a difficulty in being a man and with his role as a protector because it isn't always situations as obvious as this. It doesn't always play out like we hope it will in our man mind, thinking, yeah, that'd be great. A bunch of dogs, bring them on. We'll do some man stuff. And I used to imagine how great it would be to be walking with a girl, when I was single, and maybe suddenly 3 ninjas would jump out, try to kidnap her, and I'd fight them off. I really wanted that to happen. It never did. Never happened. Nothing ever even close ever happened like that. And since I've been married, the only ninja we've ever seen was in the store. It's that really fancy coffee maker. That's the only ninja we've ever seen. Earlier this week, in fact, it was just before I was kind of working on this very lesson, there was a scream in the kitchen. And I ran in there to the rescue. And a wasp had fallen in the waffle batter. Something. So I heroically handled the situation, and I'm on spider patrol all the time. I also take great enjoyment in planting a plastic spider for Sarah to find, but that's just for fun. But I kill the real ones. But the truth is, when men are protectors, most situations are going to be pretty mundane. I probably won't even get to be involved in the dogfight situation. It doesn't mean that the things that men do are less important. In fact, you could argue that some of these mundane things are actually probably more important. If you go to Nehemiah, I really like this because I think it helps describe what a man should be and what should motivate him. The people of God are rebuilding the wall. They've lost everything, and they've returned to kind of repair things, and they're threatened by several enemies. So not only is this an elaborate construction site, but they have people trying to stop them physically and through manipulation and all kinds of stuff. And so Nehemiah had a great strategy. It's in Nehemiah 4, starting with verse 13. I don't know if you can imagine, it's hard enough to build something, but to actually have active opposition while you're doing that, that's going to be exceptionally challenging. Here's Nehemiah 4:13. Then I stationed men in the lowest parts of the space behind the wall, the weak spots, the exposed places, and I stationed the people in families with their swords, spears, and bows. When I saw their fear, I rose and spoke to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people. Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. See, the key factor in this defense was to station them in families, because there's a difference between fighting and fighting for your family. He knew that there would be a huge difference. Now, again, none of us are going to be involved in rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem, and then it's very unlikely that we're even going to get to break up a dogfight, but something is still required, something more important. Physical threats are significant, but not as significant as spiritual ones. Rescuing someone's physical body is not as vital as rescuing someone's soul. And you see this characteristic in the ultimate Father, our God, who is our Father. And I think in order to understand anything about what fathers are supposed to be, whether genetically someone's father or someone who's a father figure, it's important to look to God, the very definition of a father. And one important thing to know about him is he is deeply concerned about our physical challenges. In fact, it's beautiful. He'll even use them to help us. But his number one priority is not the rescue of your body, it's the rescue of your soul. You might think of it this way: if a man saw his son in an accident, he would run to the scene of the accident to make sure his son was okay. He wouldn't have any concern about the car. And that helps to have God's perspective. Your body's like the car. The passenger is you, the soul, and that's who he cares about the most. God is very focused on you, the soul, like any good father would be. I'm going to read Psalm 18, part of this, if you want to look at this. Brent read part of this for us. And this is describing God's response when we call for help. And I think you'll agree that it's a great description of a father rescuing his child. This is not a very famous part of Psalms, as far as I know, but I think this tells us a lot about God as our Father. Psalm 18, I'm going to start reading with verse 1. Psalm 18, verse 1. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. The cords of death encompassed me, and the torrents of ungodliness terrified me. The cords of Sheol surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress, I called upon the Lord and cried to my God for help. He heard my voice out of his temple. Now, listen carefully to his response. And my cry for help before him came into his ears. Then the earth shook and quaked, and the foundations of the mountains were trembling and were shaken because he was angry. Smoke went out of his nostrils, and fire from his mouth devoured. Coals were kindled by it. He bowed the heavens also and came down with thick darkness under his feet. He rode upon a cherub and flew, and he sped upon the wings of the wind. He made darkness his hiding place, his canopy around him, darkness of waters, thick clouds of the skies. From the brightness before him passed his thick clouds, hailstones and coals of fire. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice. Hailstones and coals of fire. He sent out his arrows and scattered them, and lightning flashes in abundance and routed them. Then the channels of water appeared, and the foundations of the world were laid bare. At your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils, he sent from on high. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He delivered me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. They confronted me in the day of my calamity, but the Lord was my stay. He brought me forth also into a broad place. He rescued me because he delighted in me. This is so much more than a physical rescue. It's a spiritual rescue against spiritual enemies, and that's what has everything to do with us. And I love the devastating path God carves to get to the one he loves. And notice the ending. He rescued me because he delighted in me. It's not a reluctant rescue. It's not a half-hearted rescue. He delights in you. God will do anything to rescue you. Not necessarily from physical danger. That's like saving the car. He will do anything to rescue you, the soul. There's one thing in particular he does that I think shows how much he cares about us. And I've been thinking about that in my regard as a relatively new dad, and some of you and all of you, I'm sure, have been fathers to some people. I think one of my jobs as the man of the house, I have different things. I have certain jobs, killing spiders, taking out trash. But something I do almost automatically, one of the last things I do every day, my job is to make sure the doors are locked. I think that might be a good definition of a father. He's the one who makes sure the doors are locked. I failed to do this last week, ironically enough. Got up the next morning and looked up, and there's the door, and it was unlocked. And it was my fault. And I know I'm not the perfect father. It was a reminder to me about that. Never will be. But one thing I can do is make sure to keep trying to do better. Maybe better at keeping the bad stuff out. Because when the darkness falls, it's very important that the doors are locked. And when I fail to lock the door, I need to become determined to do better next time. Not just about the physical threats. That's pretty easy to just turn that bolt. I need to be more like my Father in heaven. It's one thing to be concerned about physical threats. I need to be more concerned about spiritual threats in addition to that. That's how God is. He makes sure the doors are locked. Not only to keep the bad stuff out, but also to keep us in. A lot of what we do for Ippy involves the word no. A lot of locked doors in her life right now. And it's to keep her safe. And this is also true of God. Everything he does, everything he commands is to keep us safe. He rescues us because he delights in us. There are many aspects of a father, and one priority is being a spiritual protector. Any living male can be this for anybody around them, to be a spiritual protector. This will often be a matter of making sure that the doors are locked. As men, if we want to be a spiritual protector to the souls around us, it's important to pick up the word every day. And when the next spiritual street dog comes, you'll be ready to help with the situation. But it's also vital to protect yourself and those you love by locking some doors, not allowing certain things into your house, into your minds, and into your life. And by being into the Word, you'll know better what those things are. Before we close, it's vital to remember God as your Father. And like I said before, He will do anything to rescue you, the soul. He has done everything to rescue you. The only thing that can stop Him is you. All that's left, the only missing piece, is your response. And it's important to make sure that you and your Father are good. If you want prayers for this in this regard, to make sure that you are okay with God and maybe to talk to somebody, please let us know. And if you're ready to make the decision to choose God as your Father through baptism, please let us know. But no matter what you might need at this point, you're welcome to come forward as we stand together and sing.